Alice, Mango and Popit. Chapter 1. The Portal of the Briarwood. From the day Alice carried the two kittens home from a nearby farm on Hawthorn Ridge, they were a delightful mystery. Indistinguishable twins, each as black as a moonless night, with inquisitive sparkling yellow eyes. The three lived in Alice's cosy cottage by the Briarwood. Alice was a writer by trade, a woman with a perpetual smudge of ink on her fingers, a mop of wavy blonde hair usually held up by a stray pencil. She had moved to the countryside, hoping the quiet isolation would cure a stubborn bout of writer's block. Lately, she had been struggling to come up with ideas for her new book, often finding herself staring at a blank page for hours before abandoning her desk to tend to her garden instead. True to its name, the ancient forest of the Briarwood at the very edge of her garden was a dense protective fortress of tangled blackberry brambles, towering oaks draped in thick green moss and deep emerald shadows. For Alice, the woods were a sanctuary, a quiet, breathing barrier against the chaotic noise of the modern world. As tranquil days slipped by in this quiet haven, the kittens' true natures and their extraordinary gifts began to reveal themselves. The first challenge was telling the kittens apart. One turned the fruit bowl into his personal playground, deciding that his absolute favourite plaything was one of Alice's daily mangoes. He would bat the heavy fruit across the kitchen floor with endless determination, quickly earning himself the name Mango. He also developed a ravenous obsession with cheese. He'd materialise at the faintest fridge creak, demanding his share with a bold meow. The other kitten had a funny habit of suddenly popping out from behind furniture or half-open doors to ambush her ankles, earning him the affectionate name Popit. Popit could take or leave the dairy treats right up until Alice brought home a wedge of rather strong blue cheese one afternoon. It might as well have been catnip. He went absolutely wild for it, cementing cheese time as a permanent household tradition. Seasons slipped by in gentle rhythms in the cosy cottage by the Briarwood. They endured a long, freezing winter together, Alice laughing as the growing cats experienced their first snowfall, batting confusedly at the cold white flakes from the safety of the porch. They spent the long, dark winter nights curled up together in front of a crackling log fire, Alice reading a thick paperback and sipping hot chocolate or ginger tea, always making sure to share a little cheese with her companions. By the time the magical adventure truly began, the cats were a little over a year old and almost fully grown, yet still nearly impossible to tell apart by looks alone. It was the start of a warm summer when Alice saw the magic for the first time. Mango was Alice's shadow. He followed her from room to room, watched her every move, and slept, curled around her head, at night. On a warm summer afternoon, his true magic revealed itself by the gently flowing small river that emptied into the Briarwood near the cottage. Alice had been gathering herbs when she noticed Mango circling the water by the willow tree, his tail held high. With a sudden graceful leap, Mango bounded over the edge. Alice gasped, dropping her basket, but the cat didn't sink. Instead, Mango landed lightly on the water's surface, the liquid merely rippling beneath his paws as he casually walked across the small river. Alice scrambled to the water's edge, utterly bewildered, and scooped the black cat up into her arms. Mango simply purred and offered a soft, innocent mew, looking at her as if defying gravity and walking on water was nothing out of the ordinary. Popit, on the other hand, was an adventurer. One moonlit night, while Alice sat by her window, she watched him leap from the cottage roof to a nearby oak tree. It wasn't just his agility that made her breath catch. It was the way he seemed to melt into the night. One moment he was there, and the next he had blended entirely into the shadows, shifting his camouflage to move completely undetected. Alice was beginning to think these were no ordinary cats, and as she was about to learn, The briarwood behind her home was no ordinary forest, yet their magic ran deeper than their astonishing feats. It crept into the quiet spaces between them, a silent language blooming. It didn't happen overnight. At first, Alice thought she was just incredibly in tune with her pets, but soon the coincidences became too specific to ignore. They weren't just meowing for attention. They were projecting instincts, emotions, and sometimes even fleeting images directly into her mind. Whenever Alice sat at her oak table, struggling to write a new chapter or grinding herbs for her tinctures, Mango perched beside her, a silent adviser. If she paused, uncertain between yarrow or coneflower, Mango would tap the right jar, sending a wave of warm, affirming certainty in her chest. It was as if he knew the plants as intimately as she did. Popit's messages, however, were often more protective. He acted as a sentinel. When the unseen, chaotic frequencies from the distant town spiked, or when the atmospheric energy shifted before a hidden storm, Popit would materialize from the shadows with a sharp chirp. In those moments, Alice would feel a sudden prickling static at the base of her skull, Popit's way of warning her to ground herself or grab her protective stones. Slowly, Alice realized they were acting as her guides, tuning her own senses to the subtle, living energies of the earth, as if they were preparing her for something. The ultimate proof came that very afternoon. Alice had been watching the cats playing in the overgrown back garden, right between the large rosemary bushes. As they chased each other through the tangled herbs, a strange phenomenon caught her eye. The air between the bushes seemed to warp and ripple like a faint heat mirage hovering over the grass. As Mango and Popit bounded playfully through the distortion, beautiful glowing blue lines and geometric shapes briefly flared to life over their sleek black bodies, illuminating them like living constellations. It was a fleeting, breathtaking moment. She knew then that they weren't just exploring the garden. They were connected to the unseen fabric of the world. Later that evening, the air in the cottage shifted. Mango sat by the back door, letting out a low, insistent trill, while Popit paced the windowsill, his dark form flickering in and out of the moonlight. They were trying to tell her something. She felt it in her very being. "What do you want to show me?" she asked them. Alice moved quickly. She thought to herself, "What am I doing?" But she felt incredibly alive and completely sure she was doing the right thing, whatever that thing might be. She pulled her worn canvas satchel from the closet, carefully packing her essentials. She tucked in a flask of ginger and honey tea and put on her necklace of clear quartz crystal. She knew the modern world was thick with the invisible, chaotic hum of unhelpful frequencies, one of the reasons she had moved so far away from the city she grew up in, and she wouldn't step into the wild without her protection. Finally, she wrapped up some cold sausages from breakfast that morning and tucked them inside. She had no idea how long they would be gone, and she'd need the energy. "All right," she whispered, swinging the bag over her shoulder. Both cats were sitting at the door, looking expectantly at her. "Lead the way." She pulled open the heavy back door, the hinges groaning softly in the quiet night. The crisp air brushed against her face, carrying the familiar scents of damp earth and blooming nightshade. Stepping off the porch, her boots crunched lightly against the gravel path that wound through her overgrown garden of lavender and rosemary, leaving the warm yellow light of her kitchen behind. They ventured into the briarwood. It was a full moon that night, and as they walked deeper into the woods, Alice's eyes adjusted to the moonlit night. The silver light filtered through the thick canopy of oak and sycamore leaves, painting shifting, ghostly patterns on the forest floor. The familiar crunch of twigs and the earthy smell of damp soil grounded her, until only the whisper of leaves and the soft tread of feline paws filled the night. Eventually, they reached an old, overgrown hollow. Between two ancient sycamores, the air was shimmering, bending and rippling like heat off summer pavement. Mango and Popit sat on either side of the distortion, and both began to emit a strange blue light from their dark coats. Beautiful glowing lines and geometric shapes ignited across their fur, pulsing in time with the portal's energy. Working together, the two cats activated the portal. Their combined magic tore the rippling air wide open, stabilizing the veil into a glowing, steady doorway. Without a backward glance, the cats walked calmly through the light. Alice took a deep breath, clutching the strap of her satchel. Deciding to follow, she stepped through the veil. For a single breathless moment, it felt like pushing through a curtain of cool, heavy water. The faint, ever-present buzz of the modern world, that chaotic static she had spent years trying to escape, instantly evaporated from her mind. In its place, a deep, harmonic vibration washed over her, settling into her very bones and tuning her pulse to a new, ancient rhythm. The realm on the other side was breathtaking. The air smelled of ozone and crushed pine, and the flora around them pulsed with a soft bioluminescent glow. Before her, a winding path of silver, velvety moss stretched out into the forest, illuminated by giant uncurling ferns that radiated a gentle emerald light. Above, towering trees with translucent leaves whispered in a breeze she couldn't feel, catching the ambient light like stained glass. Popit darted ahead, no longer needing to hide in the shadows. His dark coat shimmered with a faint starry iridescence in this realm. Mango walked at Alice's side, his purr vibrating so deeply she could feel it in her boots. Giant bell-shaped flowers hung from vines overhead, glowing softly like paper lanterns, while the roots of the ancient trees twisted into impossible, gravity-defying archways over the path. Every inch of the forest felt vibrantly alive, thrumming with a pure, untainted magic. They walked for what felt like miles, though Alice never grew tired, winding through the glowing thickets until the trees finally parted. As they entered the clearing, the cats began to act differently. Their relaxed, inquisitive demeanour shifted into an air of profound, respectful stillness, leading her deliberately forward. Alice hesitated, a jolt of shock and uncertainty freezing her in place as she looked at the towering figures waiting ahead. Waiting in the clearing were the guardians, tall, ethereal figures whose skin looked like woven birch bark and whose eyes held the deep, ancient wisdom of the earth. "Welcome, healer," the tallest guardian spoke, its voice echoing like rustling leaves. "Your companions have guided you well." "Why did they bring me here?" Alice asked, her hand resting instinctively on Mango's head. The tallest guardian did not answer immediately. It stepped closer, its deep amber eyes studying Alice with a profound inquisitive intensity, as if peering straight through her skin to measure her resonance. Finally, the ancient being spoke. "The balance in your world is fracturing," the guardian explained, gesturing to the glowing woods around them. "Your people are drowning in invisible nets of harsh, unnatural frequencies and silencing their bodies' natural cries with synthetic pharmakia. They treat the symptom, but they poison the root. We have watched you practice the old ways. We wish to teach you more." The guardians turned, gesturing for Alice to follow. They led her gracefully through the trees, the dense forest opening up to reveal the banks of a beautiful, wide river that sparkled like liquid crystal. Alice looked up, her breath catching as she saw the night sky perfectly reflected in the water. The stars above were brilliant and densely packed, forming swirling, unfamiliar constellations she had never seen from her own garden. Under the glowing canopy by the flowing river, time seemed to blur and stretch. Hours passed as a blink, or perhaps days unfolded in a single evening. The guardians guided Alice away to a circle of smooth obsidian stones, teaching her the ancient secrets of holistic alignment. They showed her how to identify the living pulse of a plant, placing her hands over luminous roots to feel their rhythmic hum. she learned how to weave the resonance of these wild flora with the human body's natural energy, discovering that true wellness required syncing with the earth's heartbeat rather than trying to suppress its natural alarms. As the lessons deepened, Alice glanced over to see her cats fully in their element. Mango was batting at a cluster of floating, glowing spores, his leaps defying gravity as he drifted lazily back to the mossy ground. Popit sat attentively at the foot of the tallest guardian, his yellow eyes locked on the ancient being as if he too were absorbing every word. The heavy, chaotic static of Alice's past life felt light years away, replaced by a profound clarity. They sat together under the shifting lights, and Alice even unpacked her cold sausages to share. The towering guardians regarded the earthly food with gentle, amused curiosity, while Mango and Popit eagerly joined in the feast, happily devouring their own chunks of the meat with loud rumbling purrs. When the sun began to rise, colouring the sky with hues Alice had never seen before, it was time to leave. The tall guardian approached Alice and pressed a small glowing seed into her palm. "Plant this where the frequencies are heaviest in your world. It will anchor the earth's healing." Alice thanked them, tucking the seed safely into her satchel. With a final, reverent bow to the ancient beings, she turned to follow her cats back down the silver path. The return journey felt shorter, yet heavier, as the profound peace of the glowing realm began to mix with the anticipation of the world she had to return to. The luminescent ferns slowly gave way to the morning sun, the ambient light of the canopy dimming as the blue sky brightened as they approached the distortion between the two towering sycamores. The shimmering veil rippled like a curtain of liquid glass. Mango and Popit leaped through first, their dark bodies momentarily tracing with those beautiful glowing blue lines and shapes as they breached the barrier. Alice took one last look at the breathtaking forest of light, took a steadying breath, and stepped back through the shimmering portal. The cool morning air of her own world washed over her as she emerged back into the hollow of the Briarwood. As they walked back to the cottage, the glowing seed pulsed warmly against her side, a reminder of the incredible responsibility she now carried. The cats, with their enigmatic gazes, seemed to understand this change in her. Mango purred, a deep rumbling sound, and Popit stepped out of the shadows to brush affectionately against her leg. Her journey had begun.